I'm live. Hope you are all well, fine and dandy. It will only be a quick one, this one, and it will need a little bit of thought from you. As we all know, APM has a very low pass rate. I think it's 39% in the last set of results that came out, which was the lowest alongside AAA. And there's a reason for it. It's because it's not 5 + 5 = 10. It's think about what the 5 is, think about what the other 5 is, etc. So with that in mind, that's what we're going to do today. And I've set it up as a proper exam standard, kind of like a little case study for us. So I want you to remember, we're doing not-for-profits and we're doing performance management. We're trying to manage the performance from a strategic level, meaning you're the boss and you want to make sure that the performance is good. Okay, you've got to really put yourself in a scenario, would be my advice. So with that in mind, here is a scenario. City General Hospital is a large public hospital funded primarily by the government. Its mission is to provide high quality, accessible and efficient healthcare services to the community. Something like that, we get given the mission and you're trying to manage performance, surely that performance then has to be something that helps them with high quality, accessibility, making sure it's open to all, and efficient. Okay. And then the exam question goes on and helps you even further and says, look, what we want to do, what we want to achieve in this business in this hospital, is to reduce waiting times, improve clinical outcomes for major conditions, enhance patient satisfaction, and finally, work within a budget. Okay, so what I've created for you is, let me move myself out of the way, is a report that gets given. And the question to you is, like part A of the question, which would be worth about 10 marks, would be, is this performance report effective? Now, if you watch other people talk about NFPs, they talk about the 3 E's, they waffle on about that, but 3 E's, economy, efficiency, effectiveness. Economy is the inputs, make it as cheap as possible. Efficiencies, the processes, make it as efficient as possible. And effective is the outcomes, are the outcomes what we wanted them to be? So we've got to comment on this. And obviously we're going to comment on it as to how well it reaches those strategic objectives. So I'm going to go through them one by one. Hopefully you're all still with me. So, does this performance report, this is how you've got to think, you're the strategic boss, does this performance report help the business reduce waiting times? So you look at the performance report and you look for something to do with waiting times. And it's there, look, operational efficiency, average surgery waiting time. So the report in and of itself is good. It tells you exactly the average surgery waiting time. So we like that. But then if you have a look at the numbers, it's 16 this quarter. It was 18 last quarter. Remember, we wanted to be as short as possible, don't we? So that's good. We are reducing them. But the target was 15 or less. And the national average is 14. So your conclusion would be, it is measured, the average wait, and it's showing improvement from one quarter to the other, but it missed the target and it's worse than the national average. Report is partially effective. Anybody could do that. Simple, straightforward. Next objective was, we need to improve clinical outcomes for major conditions. Now, if I say to you, think of some major conditions for a hospital, you might think of, I don't know, heart attacks, something like that, and then improving the clinical outcomes, how many people survive, that sort of thing. So you're the boss and you're thinking, does this performance report help us improve clinical outcomes for major conditions? And we're looking at it and we're thinking, well, I don't really see much at all. The only thing that I could see was quite close was that clinical effectiveness there. Hospital-acquired infection rates are in there, and readmission rates are in there. So, but that's just not really good enough, is it? So my answer would be, like, the report measures some outcomes, but lacks breadth. Where's the mortality rates? Where's the recovery rates? Where are they breaking down into heart attacks and whatever else it might be, cancer, whatever it might be? Okay. And I'm getting this because I'm really putting myself in the scenario. So let's have a look at the next one. Let's keep going. Enhancing patient satisfaction. Does this report help us enhance patient satisfaction? So you look at it and you'll see that there's no mention of patient satisfaction. Can you see anything in there that might help us with patient satisfaction? And hopefully, the same as me, you can see maybe the number of formal complaints, okay, which is actually going the wrong way. It's now at 45. Last quarter is 40. The target is less than 35. So, I don't think it's a very good key performance indicator, which is what all of these are. I don't think it's a very good KPI. And even in it, it's not working its magic, because the whole point of these performance reports is so everybody thinks, right, if I do well on this, the business does well. The business enhances patient satisfaction. Well, it's clearly not working. So I would say patient satisfaction is not measured at all. That's a major gap in here. Formal complaints have increased, which just suggests potential issues with everything. Okay. Now, what I want you to think at this stage as well is, what knowledge have I used here? And you haven't really used much knowledge at all. You can use things when it comes to performance management in NFPs. You can use performance prism, balance scorecard, but you're not going to be asked the real detail of those models. You've got to apply them. But anyway, does this performance report, is it effective in helping us operate within the allocated annual budget? So you're looking for budget, and if you look right at the top, you'll see budget variance. So what do you reckon? Is that good? Does that help us? Does that keep us on top of operating within the allocated annual budget? I think the answer is yes, isn't it? And we do a budget variance, but it's going the wrong way. We're 3% over, or does that mean 3% under? I'm not sure, because it's a positive 3%. I suppose being close to budget, I suppose this is bad news. I can't remember what I thought now. But anyway, yeah, measured variance, but the target missed because the target was 2%. Cost per day, yeah, there is cost per day in there. That's increased as well and is above the national average. So maybe the economy and the efficiency is not right. But overall then, so far, it's not a great report, is it? If you're using this to try and incentivize people to meet these objectives, it's not really working. It's not really working because it's not very good. And then you have to think to yourself, well, is there anything else I can put in here for these 10 marks? And there is, because I told you what the mission of the business was, to provide high quality. Well, is there anything there to do with quality? To provide accessibility, is there anything there that says it's open to all? To provide efficiency, is there anything there that talks about efficiency? So, there's some efficiency. I think there's some of that. So we can see the average surgery waiting. We've talked about that, and the bed occupancy rate. Let's talk about that. It's increasing, which is a good thing. Maybe getting too high, because it may become a point where you're overfilled. You need it to be accessible. So the report covers efficiency with bed occupancy, possibly too high, some quality and effectiveness aspects, and some financial control. I agree with that. But there's no accessibility mentioned at all. And high quality aspect is only partially covered, if at all covered, really. I suppose we've got staff turnover in there. So my conclusion would be this. The report focuses heavily on operational and financial measures. It lacks sufficient focus on patient satisfaction. There was none of them. broader clinical outcomes, how well people recover from heart attacks, etc. That's not there. It doesn't measure accessibility at all. Staff turnover. The reason why I talk about staff turnover is mention it now, is because if you'll notice, as I've been going through this, I've used every part of the scenario now. I've used everything in the performance report. I've used the mission. I've used the objectives. That's what you've got to do. You've got to be really specific. So staff turnover, if you see that, where's that? Right at the very bottom in the other, is high and worsening. And yeah, it doesn't, and it's far higher than the target as well. So that would impact quality, wouldn't it, if your staff is moving on all the time. Benchmarking is used because you've got the national averages in there, but it could be expanded. Is the national average, how useful is that to us? Probably quite useful, but maybe expand it a bit more. Enhancing patient satisfaction then. We had those, didn't we? What I'm trying to do here is now recommend some improvements. How could it be improved? Well, this is where you've got to think on your feet. And you've got to think, well, how could I improve patient satisfaction? Well, how about having a KPI as a patient survey? How satisfied are you? How very satisfied are you? I think the last time I went into a hospital, there was little buttons that you press that say, how pleased are you with it? And that will just be feeding into this sort of thing, into a performance report. So that would help us gauge patient satisfaction for sure. And then in your exam, I would always suggest that if you're asked to recommend improvements, you justify why. So even though it's quite obvious to you, why? Because it directly measures objective 3 and is a key aspect of quality, isn't it? Quality is judged by the consumer. What improvements could we have for improving the clinical outcomes for major conditions objective? Again, you have to think through it yourself. And you say, right, well, let's have some condition-specific things like mortality rates for heart attacks, cancer survival rates, benchmarked against national standards. All common sense, got to think it through, got to be prepared to, and always say why. And say, well, because this provides a deeper view of effectiveness and of improving the clinical outcomes. We could make improvements on the mission, couldn't we? So we could say, right, in terms of the mission, we could track waiting times or service uptake by demographic group or geographic area. Okay, so are the waiting times different in poorer areas, in rural areas or whatever? And we can judge that against benchmarks as well. So that would address the accessible part of the mission. One thing you could also say with this, it's all numbers based, isn't it? So consider having some narrative, some qualitative information. So add commentary explaining what the trends are or what actions are being taken. Okay, always will help you in an exam. So provide context beyond the numbers. So that's how you do it. If you followed along to it, which most of you seem to have done, which is fantastic, you will notice that I didn't give you any knowledge. What I gave you was an exam technique. What I said to you were these sorts of things, these key takeaways. You've got to critically evaluate. So you've got to look at it and say, right, is this suitable? Is it effective performance measure, performance report, framework or whatever within that scenario? The scenario here being the mission and the objectives. Then you've got to apply it pragmatically. So when it says major conditions, think heart attacks, cancer, whatever. So think pragmatically, using the data to support your analysis. If you start writing about generic answers, you will fail APM like most people do. 39% pass rate, that means 61% fail. Okay, and they fail because of this. They're so taken in by learning knowledge and not using exam technique, not putting themselves in the scenario. Always justify yourself. So clearly explain the reasoning behind your recommendations, your evaluations. Link them back to the mission, the objectives, to whatever it was in the question. And professional skills, the way you communicate it, your analysis, your evaluation, your skepticism, your commercial acumen, all of those actually come through from putting myself in the scenario and using common sense. Do that, you'll get all of those. So all those things were key to doing well on this little mini scenario I made up for you. This is what the examiner says you need to do to pass. Okay, so this is not me, this is coming from the examiner, although I totally agree with it. Understand the why. So grasp the underlying principles and the purpose of performance measurement in NFPs. So basically, we've got to be accountable. We've got to achieve our mission. That's really important, a mission in an NFP, isn't it? Because the mission in FP, for profit, is profit. The mission in not-for-profit is a lot harder to understand. So think about that. And then VFM, we didn't really go into VFM because we didn't need to in this scenario. But VFM, I wanted to avoid it because it's what you see everywhere. Everyone does it. The 3 E's, basically. Economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Think strategically. I couldn't agree more. Think like you're the boss. Okay, so view performance management not as a technical exercise, but it's a tool to support decision making. I'm going to use that report and I'm going to make decisions from it. That report might lead me to make really good decisions if it's got the right KPIs, or make me to really bad decisions if it's got the wrong KPIs and doesn't have narrative, etc., etc. And finally, focus on adding value. So ensure your analysis, your recommendations are relevant, they're practical. You're not saying we should have 100% beds, always full, never over full, never under full. You know, you've got to be practical. Address the core issues faced by the organisation in the scenario. In a bigger scenario, there'll be some limitations on what can be done, won't there? But remember, the bigger the scenario, the better the news, because the scenario is where the answer is. The scenario holds the answer. It's just up to you to drag it out. So the bigger the scenario, the bigger the answer you've got there at your fingertips. Okay, so that was that. I hope you found it useful to go through an actual. I know it's hard on your lunchtime as well to actually do some work and think things through, but I hope it helps you. So please do comment and subscribe, and like us at YouTube, please. It does really help. But more importantly than that, what I would like you to do, because this is the final one of the lunchtime lives of this week, moving. So you'll see me do a few things from Dubai in the next couple of weeks. So, but starting next week, I'll be back on it again at lunchtimes, ruining your lunchtimes. But what I would like to know from you is, A, what you think of them, B, what else you would like me to cover. Is there anything specific? I'd like to help you if at all possible. So, yeah, do comment or do put in the chat box or whatever. Let me know as much as you can, and I will get around to doing them. We're pretty good. All of these things did come, actually. All this week's came from when I last asked on our Facebook ACCA group. I got given a load of topics. So, that's how I'll choose them. It's you're the boss, as it were. Okay, so all it leaves me to say is thank you very much. See you again probably on Monday.